So today I'm joined by Ben McGannan. Ben is the founder and managing director of Wellbeing People. Morning, Ben.
Morning.
How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Good, good, good. So Ben, you describe Wellbeing People as striving to empower organisations, communities, and individuals to make positive choices around their health and well-being. So tell us a little bit more about what Wellbeing People does.
Yeah, well, Simon, I think that really is the essence of it for us is empowerment of people to take ownership of their own well-being. And I think the significant difference for us in terms of health and well-being is that difference between the fact that we will all at some point in our life need a medical intervention. So we'll need the health system. It's a really valuable system. It's there for us to support us in our health needs. But when it comes to well-being, actually, we all own our well-being, whether we choose to do anything with it or not. We don't actually need a third party to intervene. It's ours. We have it, and so our job is really just unlocking that potential in people to go. I do have my well-being. It's up to me how I want to optimize it and what it means to me. So that's really what it's about. It's just about that connection for the individual. I guess we do live in a system, in a health system that prescribes solutions to our health problems. So we do become a little bit reliant, I think, on that sort of, well, I'll go to the doctor, I'll go to A&E, I'll go to my private medical, I'll see somebody, they'll cure it for me, they'll sort it for me. Whereas we very much look at well-being as being yours, and that's where we're just trying to unlock your own potential, really.
That's a great way of explaining it, and I've never really sort of thought of it that way. Because the health system, as you say, is more designed as a solution rather than preventative, isn't it? And from what you've just described there, you're talking about taking ownership for us, preventing, or as much as we physically can, things that might happen to us.
Yeah, I think it's both that preventative side, but it's also the fulfillment side. There's a lot just to be got from our own well-being and knowing what makes us happy and defining what that means and what it looks like. And I very much think that it's different for everybody. We find our well-being in all sorts of different ways. And so therefore it's really important that you as the individual take ownership of that journey, take ownership of that definition of what your goals are. And that's really what well-being is about for us. And uniquely in that respect, that it means that well-being has to be diverse, it has to be inclusive because it belongs to everybody, and it can't be prescriptive and it can't be judgmental. I can't. If I ask you what makes you happy, what would define your happiness and your well-being and what your goals would be, I can't then judge them because they're yours.
Yeah.
So the whole piece of it, and I think there's an element that from a health perspective, the word well-being has become aligned to all sorts of things. So it's used as a marketing term for weight loss, for diet, for supplements, for fitness, for exercise, for health insurance, whatever it may be. But I think that kind of devalues the word a little bit. It's a bit in the same sense that if we talk about diet, most people would automatically think about losing weight, where actually diet's what we eat. It's not meant to be something that you lose weight doing. It's just the diet is what you eat. So well-being, I think, is very similar to that. It's a word that we've become accustomed to just being lumped together with health and well-being being this one entity, where actually I think they're two very, very different things.
Yeah, and that part about us all being individuals and having individual sort of goals and what makes us happy, and I always like thinking about do you remember the movie? It was an 80s movie, City Slickers.
I remember the name. I'm not sure I remember the actual movie.
Yeah, and there's a part in it where the main character is sort of going on. He wants to find what the meaning of life is, and I think the actor's Jack Palance in the movie, and he's sort of, all he keeps saying is that it's one thing, but not actually saying what it is.
Okay.
But I think the point there that I'm making, Ben, is that actually it's different for all of us.
Yeah.
It's that one thing is different for all of us. What what's what's important to me and my goals and what success looks like for me is different to what it looks like for you or anyone else. And as you say, that's the same as well-being. What's
Yeah,
important to each one of us.
absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about your origin story. How did you sort of decide to, or why did you decide to set up your own business, and why Wellbeing People?
Yeah, so it's quite a long story, but I'll try and condense it for you. So I grew up in a family engineering business. We manufactured bottling equipment, and in the 1980s, we were main contractors to Perrier in the UK. And they happened to be the first company in the UK to start a water cooler business. So consequently, we built the first line to wash, fill, and cap the bottles that you now see on top of a water cooler, which was back in 1989.
Okay.
And not having an engineering background myself, I was keen to diversify our business, and I managed to persuade my family to diversify. So we had the engineering side of the business, but in 1992 we started Water for Work, which was then the early years of the water cooler industry, and that. My father passed away 25 years ago. The Water for Work gradually became the bigger part of the business. And then by 2006, I guess the water cooler industry was reaching its kind of peak in terms of a virgin industry that had ballooned and grown and into a sort of starting to consolidate at that point. And we just commissioned a kind of roots up review of our business, of the industry, of where we were, and what we were a very heavily service orientated business. And what we really discovered was that the whole of the water cooler industry was focused on a level of service, good or bad, and it was just water. So people just say, oh, it's just water, but it's all about the service. And we kind of just questioned that and started looking at it. What do we actually do? We did a bit of research and say commissioned this review, and we looked at it and went, actually, what we do is hydrate Britain's workforce. So what does that mean? So that then took us on a journey of really exploring well-being. And so this was 2006. And that then we were like, well, actually, hydration is the cornerstone of people's well-being. So what does that mean? So then that took us down a line of actually wanting to be able to have that conversation with people. So the idea of using an interactive health kiosk became our way to create that kind of moment to have that conversation. And within 2 or 3 months of that concept blossoming within our own business, we very quickly saw it as actually this is a completely separate business from the water. So initially it was very much around the hydration, but as we got engaged in talking to people around their health and well-being, we separated it out and created a separate division to actually what became Wellbeing People effectively.
That's fantastic how you've changed and evolved from effectively an engineering business into a well-being business, and how that worked through. And
Yeah, but
you
via a water cooler business. So yeah, it was an interesting transition for sure. Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned there about the kiosks. I was having a look at those on your website, Ben. Tell us a bit more about the kiosks that you've got.
Yeah, so the interactive health kiosk is literally kind of does what it says on the tin. We take it into workplace or public settings where effectively you can have a health MOT. So it's a 6 or 7 minute health MOT where you'll measure your weight, your body mass index, your body fat content, your blood pressure, your heart rate. We can do additional things like Q risk. We can do lifestyle questionnaires through it as well. And effectively it's that what I would call an opportunistic engagement where people haven't gone necessarily I'm going to work to engage in my health or well-being today, but they'll step on a kiosk, have a printout of their results, and it will just trigger what we would call a light bulb moment that they might start thinking about their own health and well-being, and so therefore it starts a conversation from there. So we've been doing that for sort of 16 years, and that was, I guess, the core product of Wellbeing People within the water cooler business. For most of the time that we've been operating as Wellbeing People, and it became then a referral pathway, so that once you had your health MOT, you had your results, you had your conversation, we could refer people into either their HR or the NHS, their local GP, 1U, those kind of services to actually act on the impulse of having had the engagement and wanting to maybe do something about where they were at.
Okay, so yeah, no, a great sort of, as you say, lead generator in them that actually also provides a helpful service, but can lead on to other things as well. And so, who's your primary target market? Who's your ideal customer, Ben?
So anybody who has an organisation that employs people that wants to actually invest in their well-being, I guess, is the first answer. A lot of our clients are corporate, so tend to be larger organisations that I guess have they may have a head of well-being, or their HR team may have a budget around well-being, and that engagement and well-being is part of the environment. So I'd say from an SME point of view, we do certainly work with SMEs, but tends to be larger SMEs, I guess, that have it as a sort of part of their business model and their business plan. But yeah, I mean, we work in the public sector and the private sector, so organisations that have a desire to engage their staff, and obviously something like the kiosk is particularly an engagement tool. Other parts of what we do with the Recalibrate Wellbeing program are about the transformation and the empowerment. But certainly from a kiosk perspective, it's organisations with staff that they want to engage in a conversation around wellbeing.
And that's something that's really become sort of more and more important for organisations, isn't it? The well-being of staff, and the more the healthier well-being, if you said. I mean, I remember when I started work, and I'm showing my age now, but the main sort of well-being was the bar and that we had in the building of the subsidised bar, may I add. But now it's a lot more actually helping employees to be physically and mentally healthy, and helping them to do that. So a real sort of growing thing within organisations.
Yeah, I guess it's quite a blurred line, because I think one of the problems around well-being, and again, just the word itself and the industry, is that there isn't an industry. Mm-hmm. There isn't a trade association, there isn't a set of quality standards. It's a very holistic subject. It covers like a multitude of things. So there isn't, as I said earlier, that piece that well-being gets attached to health or diet or supplements or fitness or something else. So I think from a perspective of the broader concept of well-being and what organizations are trying to achieve with it, often falls under a kind of reward and benefit kind of space, which, as you say, has maybe shifted from subsidized alcohol and other things to whatever it might be, fruit and gyms and that kind of stuff. I think the big shift that I've seen so in 2006, I really would have called it a virgin industry. But yeah, I still look at it now and think, well, it's still really a virgin industry, because not that much has changed since 2006. But one of the fundamental shifts that I think we've seen is when the crash happened in 2008, our client base, and we were doing a lot of work with the NHS back then as well, and the Borman review had just happened, which was like a roots-up review of the well-being in the NHS, 1.4 million staff at the time. And the conversation very quickly evaporated after the crash. Companies were like, we can't be talking about well-being when we're making redundancies. We can't, the business is struggling. Well-being is not a priority. And I think what we see now post-pandemic is an absolute reverse in that situation. So I think the big shift has been that, as you said, that kind of desire for companies to look after the health and well-being of their staff has shifted massively in terms of recognizing the need post-pandemic. And we were chatting earlier about hybrid working from home, the challenges and all those different things. Companies maybe with 1,000 staff could have 1,000 people working in 1,000 different places on any given day. So the whole landscape around the personalization of well-being, I think, is really the key change. Because if you take it from a reward and benefit perspective, you could say, okay, we'll have fruit in the office, we'll give people gym membership, we'll give them an EAP. They're all things that equally apply to everybody if they want to use them, but the uptake may be very, very different in different organizations and for different people. So I think that kind of understanding and expectation even from people now that it is a personal thing, well-being, and therefore how you provide it to your staff is a personal thing as well, and it's not one size fits all. So that for me, that would be the biggest shift that I think we've seen.
Yeah, okay, no, that's really interesting actually. And how what impacts you mentioned there about the pandemic and COVID-19? How have you seen that change the industry, you know, that you're in?
So largely, I don't think the industry is, well, in terms of how it's changed anything, I think it's changed face-to-face to online.
Yeah,
that would be the biggest thing. And if I look at well-being, and if we call it an industry, then at best that's a disparate amalgamation of thousands of individuals, sole traders, SMEs, people professionally in nutrition or sleep or whatever their subject may be, all, I think, to a degree, very vocationally going about their business, trying to make a positive impact on people's lives. But it's very much a disparate thing for me. Because there isn't an association, there isn't an industry as such. So I think from a point of view of how it's changed the industry, a lot of those people who would have been doing a lot of face-to-face work have therefore had to find ways to do that online. And I think the fact that, you know, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday working rota in offices, and you don't know who's going to be in the office when. So I think it's just made a greater awareness that we have to have this flexibility to how we as businesses or coaches or individuals are going to apply what we can to help people on their wellbeing journeys in a very different environment. I mean, certainly our business was 90% was face-to-face before the pandemic. And that, I mean, that was a major kind of shockwave for us as a business, because literally overnight, 90% of our business we couldn't deliver. So yeah, I think that's the biggest single change the pandemic's had in terms of how we provide our services.
Okay, so you because of the pandemic or a result of that, it's sort of made you think about how you deliver the services that you offer people, and I guess people are more open to as we are now speaking over Zoom, or whereas before it was a natural thing to, well, let's have a meeting.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, just in general business terms, the like you say, you and I having this conversation now, which will be a half an hour, 40 minutes of our time, whatever, we haven't traveled, and we can achieve so much more. And I find this very personal. I mean, you and I have never met, but I feel like I'm meeting you in person, even though we're at the end of a camera. So yeah, I think the delivery of our services, we didn't have any digital delivery pre-pandemic. So it took us a few months to take our Recalibrate Wellbeing program and digitalize it and turn it into a product that we could deliver via Zoom or Teams as a coaching. And very much for us, wellbeing, it needs to be a coach-led service. I have never ever met anyone who doesn't understand the basics of their wellbeing. You know, if we talk about the things we know are good for us and the things we know are bad for us, and the public health messaging, I mean, we're all very well versed. And you know, we do a lot of work around health inequality, and I've never met anyone who doesn't understand that smoking's bad for them, that alcohol is probably bad for them, that eating 5 a day is good for them, that getting outside, that movement, all those things. I've never met anyone who doesn't get that. So what is it that stops us from owning that ourselves and doing things that actually make us feel better, not worse, and take us on that journey of kind of fulfilling our own optimal wellbeing journey? And I do believe that at the core of that is the need for the coaching part to set us on our way and to get us on that journey, and for us to be empowered in that way. And I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier regarding the fact that we are so used to when we don't feel well, we feel under the weather. I mean, COVID's been a massive example of it. You know, we feel like it's someone else's responsibility. Someone else has got to solve this for me. And so therefore, I think that at the core, which is again why I think the industry is this amalgamation of coaches and individuals and sole traders that are able to empower people along their way in loads of different ways. So yeah, I think taking that coach-led approach, you can easily do that with a digital tool now, which you could have done before the pandemic, but I don't think the world was ready for it, was it? So
no, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. The technology was there, but hadn't been accepted within
yeah,
sort of generally how we use things. And Ben, you mentioned there about a coach-led sort of process. So um, explain to me a little bit more about what you mean by that, because not everybody sort of fully understands how a coach-led process links to something like this. We all understand, well, athletes have coaches or
yeah.
etc. But what does a coach-led mean to you and your business?
Yeah, so Recalibrate Wellbeing is essentially a 12 module program, which we would normally carry out over 12 weeks. It's an hour a week with the digital tool, with the video and the support from that. And you could go through it. I could send you a link to it. You could go through it on your own entirely without the support of a coach. The coach-led bit for us is actually having it facilitated by a coach. So an hour a week, but mainly for us in a kind of business to business context, that will be a small group of 6 up to 6 people, or larger groups that we would have on a kind of coach-led, cameras on Zoom or something, maybe 30 or 40 people, where the coach is actually leading the session, coaching people through the program, and kind of helping people to navigate the program in so much that every week we cover 12 topics. Again, I don't like the word holistic, but it's the right word. It kind of holistically covers all the bases of the things that you might think about in well-being, of your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, your habit forming, sustaining habits, all those kind of things. And each week we would have a progress experiment. But you as an individual at the end of each session would choose your progress experiment. So the coach is there to facilitate that, to answer questions, to help people navigate that whole process and coach them through the program. And the group coaching, I think, is the strongest way of that, because we also then get that kind of accountability to ourselves, each other, and the coach in sort of forming those habits. Because essentially, in empowering people to own their own journey, what we're doing is empowering behavior change over a period of time through a series of progress experiments that may work for you. We deal in like 1% progress experiments, and the notion that you may try something and it might not work, and that's fine. If it doesn't work for you, then you've learned something, but you can choose the next thing. And of the different topics, you may be somebody that really struggles with sleep, and someone else may breeze through their sleep section because they get 8 hours of sleep every night and nothing wakes them up, kind of thing. So it's very, again, that personalization which the coach can bring to a group of people by just navigating them all through it together and helping them to kind of take on board those behavior change elements and try the things that they need to try to drive it forward for themselves. And I think without the coach, you're less likely to be committed to that journey and stick to that journey just by watching a module on a computer screen for an hour a week.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I always use the analogy of sort of going to the gym. If you've got an appointment with a personal trainer at the gym, you're more likely to go along at that time. Whereas if you just say to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym, you're perhaps less likely to go. And then with the personal trainer there, you've got somebody giving you guidance and support and encouragement and motivation, which helps you to and I think the best definition of coaching is helping people to fulfill their own potential, which I think is really what coaches do. And I often say with business coaching, Ben, that most business owners actually know what they should be doing. Same as you say with well-being, but generally they're not doing it for a number of reasons, and that could be because they know what they should be doing, but they don't know how to do it,
Yeah.
or they know what they should be doing, but they're procrastinating,
And,
or they know what they should be doing, but perhaps they're using time as an excuse. I don't have time to do that.
yeah.
But
And I think
actually,
your analogy of the business coaching or the business mentoring, you know, if you're mentoring me in my business, you're not trying to tell me how to run my business. You're not trying to tell me what to do. You're trying to coax out of me the answers that all lie within. And I guess it's very, very similar in that regard. And I think also that the piece of that, I don't think people understand, because of the way well-being has just been lost in health, the difference. So I think in coaching people through, I know when I first turned up, and so Pip Lawrence, who's our wellbeing director now, her business was Day One Wellness, and she was the original founder of the Recalibrate Wellbeing program, and she developed that whole program. And I was actually on an awards panel, and she'd been nominated several times, and I'm like, I knew Pip. I thought, I need to go and talk to Pip. I need to sign up for this program. So this was like 5 years ago. I was just turning 50. So I signed up for the program, and I signed up, I guess, with my business head on. So I wasn't going there expecting to transform my well-being. I ran a well-being business. I was like, my well-being's fine, you know. So I turned up to Pip, and I'm like, right, first of all, Pip, before we start, if you're going to tell me I can't drink alcohol, I'm out. If you're going to tell me I've got to run, I'm just going to tell you now, I don't like running. And if you tell me I've got to go to the gym, I'm not going to the gym because I find it really intimidating. And she was like, whoa, like this is not, there's no judgment in this course whatsoever. This is all about you. So you're not going to get any of that from me. So let's just get that clear from the beginning. So that first thing for me was an immediate realization that I had so many kind of preconditions and judgments about what the word well-being might mean if I went on a well-being course, which Pip disarmed me of, like, in the first 3 or 4 minutes of having that session. And then particularly for me in week 2, where we were covering nutrition, the progress experiment that I chose was to go off and just explore a variety of colorful fruit and vegetables. And I kid you not, it just blew my mind within a week how much impact that had on my mental well-being. And I guess I was somebody that managed my food intake and my energy output in terms of like energy in, energy out. So I didn't overthink about the quality. And one of the big things that changed in my life in doing Recalibrate, and I genuinely found it life-changing, which was why we ended up merging and merging our business with Pips. But the big thing for me was the when I started exploring nutrition in that way, and having that array of fruit and vegetable in that way, and felt so much better, which I guess is the thing about the progress experiments. Like, I wasn't going to give that up after that, because I felt better.
yeah,
And I wanted that then. So that whole piece, I wasn't trying to lose weight, but I lost about 1.25 stone. I never went on a diet, but the change in diet that I made during those 12 weeks has stuck with me ever since. And I lost, I think, about 1.25 stone, and I've never gained that weight again since. It wasn't an objective. I didn't feel like I needed to lose weight, but that part for me was just like, at the end of the 12 weeks, I'm like, wow, this has just had such a significant impact on my life. And at the beginning of it, my goal, I was just turning 50. My goal was, that I set myself, was to be healthier and fitter at 60 than I was at 50. And in terms of, you know, anyone listening or anyone wanting to kind of take control of their own well-being, that goal has become so powerful for me. It underlines every choice I make. Now, we all make choices that are not perfectly healthy or necessarily good for us in every sense, but when I evaluate my well-being journey, that's always the underlying thing. So has my relationship with alcohol changed? Definitely, over the 5 years, and it continues to change, because I have to ask myself honest questions. I run regularly now and absolutely love it. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but it did as a consequence of the coaching. And I'd probably put that down to Pip being a great coach, in fairness, in helping me with that. But I don't go to the gym still, because I still find it intimidating with all these muscly bound young men, like, making me feel like completely inadequate. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
no, and I think that's really interesting what you shared there, Ben. Is that even being in the well-being industry, when you when you saw an outside perspective from Pip, you actually sort of had a change of mindset and a change of view, and I think that's all down to you having that open mind of then accepting, well, there's more that I can learn here, more that I can take on board, and that sounds though it's had a great effect on you sort of personally and your own well-being, let alone that of the business through joining forces with Pip as well. So what's your biggest learning since you've been in business, Ben?
Or since I've been in business, I guess for me, the whole of life and business is always been intrinsically linked, because I grew up in a family business from as young as I can remember. So for me, the biggest learning I've ever had is like, do what you love. If you're happy doing what you do, you'll have wealth in a broader sense than the financial sense. So yeah, my biggest lesson in life has been do what you love, because life's too short not to. And we spend so much time working that if that's not a pleasurable thing for you, then yeah, it's very hard to say at the end of your career that you've had a good career.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great piece of advice there. Do what you love, do what you're passionate about. So, and I always like to wrap up with this sort of question, Ben, but what's the best advice you would give to an 18-year-old you?
Oh, again, the same lines. I mean, follow your dreams, do what you love. Don't compromise on it. If you enjoy something, go out and do it. And don't choose your career on the basis of the financial reward or the career path, or do what you love. It's a funny thing my father used to say to me, but as a kid and as an adult, which used to ruffle me a bit as an adult more than as a kid, to be honest. But if ever he wanted you to do something, he would say, oh, could you just do this for me? And if you gave it that, oh, really? And he'd go, okay, no, don't bother. If you can't do it happily, don't do it at all. And it always got me, because you'd go like, okay, well, I am going to do it, and so right, do it happily. And I think it's great advice, again from any age, but if you're going back to my 18-year-old self, like, do something happily or don't do it.
Yeah, that's I've got two teenage daughters, so that reaction that you just explained there is fairly common. So I'm going to be putting that into practice, Ben, and trying that line with my two teenagers. So
yeah, because you can't hide from it, because like you're left with that choice then, aren't you?
yeah,
Okay, I will do it happily, and if they say, well, we're not going to do it, then fine.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And not only my teenagers, something that I'm going to look at in myself as well. So because it makes a big difference, doesn't it, if you're doing things happily than if you're doing something just thinking to yourself, I'm not enjoying this, or I don't like it. It changes the way you look at things. So
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question to apply to ourselves, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your business and Wellbeing People and your journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed it as well. Thank you.